Welcome into King Whale's album review party. My God, my God, they couldn't leave it alone. I mean, we didn't want them to leave it alone, I should say, for the first part. But welcome into King Whale's album review party. I'm here with my co-host, the jabroni hip hop fan.
Hi fans, how are you?
And if you've been keeping up on the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, then you completely understand why Ty is named Jabroni Hip Hop Fan, and you completely understand what we're about to talk about. Because there are so many layers to this. I was in New York while the tracks were just coming, because once we did Euphoria, we felt pretty good. We were like, okay, yeah, we've been keeping up with it, and then it just
Drake's gonna take like a week or so to respond. We got time.
yeah,
You picked
exactly,
the worst week possible,
to
and
go to New
it's
York.
to
Ugh,
go to New York. And you know
it's
what?
insane.
Drake asked for it. Drake
He
Drake
did.
said, "Come on, man, drop. When you
Let's
drop,
drop
then
back to back. So then, so what happened after Euphoria? Drake dropped. No, after Euphoria, Kendrick dropped
the first was 616 in LA.
616 in LA. Then Drake
Was the
came
first
back
drop.
with family members. Then Kendrick went Meet the Grams. Then he went Not Like Us. And the last thing that's been said was Drake dropping The Heart Part 6. And
Mhm.
I think that's the timeline
That
that we're at.
that is the
So
timeline we're at right now.
we couldn't really decide. Like it didn't really make sense for us to do a whole episode on each track because the tracks were kind of like responding to each other and they were dropped within hours. So what we
Mhm.
decided to do is we're just going to talk about Drake and what he said, what we think worked in his disses, because as the disses got more intense, some of them started to drift over into like problematic, and I feel like you can't just not address that. So we're going to talk about on this episode today, we're going to talk about Drake, what he said, some of his best disses from these last few tracks, and where we think he kind of misstepped in these disses.
Yes, we will absolutely be covering everything that Kendrick did next. It's
Yeah,
just this is the best way that we can kind of structure
I'm
coming
like, we
into
gotta
this after. I mean, how can you keep up with disses being dropped within an hour of each other, even processing what just happened?
we gotta talk about. I mean, yeah, and we have to keep it like organized. Like, yeah, like how can you respond? By the time we had recorded, if we were trying to keep up, by the time we recorded the video on Family Matters, Meet the Grams would have been out. And
Mhm.
so it
It
just
would have
wouldn't
been
have
out
worked.
mid-recording.
Kendrick would have came on the podcast and rapped Meet the Grams live and just been like, I'm taking over.
Oh shoot, the album review party got a Kendrick exclusive.
Got a Kendrick exclusive. Okay, so I guess we'll start with like some of the best lines from Drake's songs, Family Matters, some of the best disses from Family Matters and The Heart Part 6, because
Mhm.
we did ours on Drop and Give Me 50. I thought that was a super strong track by Drake. I think he hit all the right points that he needed to in a response. I thought the Taylor Made freestyle was significantly weaker, but it was kind of a thing to kind of egg
Mhm.
Kendrick on. But I think
But
once we get to the Kendrick responses, I think Drake's gonna wish he didn't drop Taylor Made.
yeah, I think that definitely with hindsight now, TaylorMade doesn't hold up as well. But thankfully, I think even after all of this, I think Family Matters still does hold up pretty well as
Mm-hmm.
a strong diss with some notable, in from my opinion, fatal flaws in the track that keep it from being as strong as it probably needed to be for this high level of a diss.
So what do you think were some of the stronger lines, some of the best disses that he had in Family Matters?
I think I think number one, the way he starts it with having that little line by his mom, I believe it
Mhm.
is,
Yeah,
who's saying maybe in this song you shouldn't start by saying, and then
yep,
jumping straight in with the N-word being a response to Kendrick in Euphoria is
yeah.
just such a strong way for Drake to come out swinging, and it really sets up like the 6 7 minute track that we have.
I like it because it really shows that like I don't care what you think. I don't care that you think I'm not black enough. I'm black.
Hmm.
My dad is black. It's in my genes. I can say it. I've been saying it for a
Hmm.
long time. In fact, and Kendrick even refers, like, he calls Drake the N word many, many times. So it's like, you can't really call someone the N word and then, like, be like, you can't use the N word. But anyway, I think it
Hmm.
was really strong for Drake to come out that way and be like, basically, Kendrick was like, stop saying the N word. And Drake was like, no. And I think that's the best response that he could have given to that because he's like, no, I am black. I am black. My skin tone is black.
Hmm.
So I thought that was very strong as well for him to start it. Um, I
Absolutely.
I think one of the second lines that I liked is when he says like, "You the black messiah, wifing up a mixed queen." The lines
Hmm.
before that were a little sus, but that line specifically because it feels like a lot of Kendrick's dissing on Drake in his blackness was because he's mixed. Something that Drake can't control. Now again, Kendrick also dissed Drake for trying to be part of the culture but not actually being part of the culture, which is a whole separate issue. But again, a lot of it, people think that Drake isn't really black, sorry, because he's mixed, because he's half black, half white. And Drake here is talking about like, okay, you're the black messiah, deciding who can be in the culture and who cannot, which is a really good point because again, he's like, so when did you get this power to decide who's black and who's not? And if you did get this power, you're married to a mixed girl. So what, is she not really black either? Because
Hmm.
I'm mixed and you don't think I'm black. So is your mixed queen? She must not really be black either, right? Because mixed
Hmm.
people don't count as black. I thought that was a good. I kind of wish he kind of went a little bit more on that, not necessarily on like I feel like he focused more on Whitney and he should have focused more on like, okay, who made you the black messiah? Like why are you getting to decide who's black and who's not? And how are you gonna say that I'm not black when your wife is mixed? Like to me, he
Hmm.
could have went in a little bit stronger at that, and we only
Hmm.
got one line at it. I thought it was a
Hmm.
good line, but I do think it would have been stronger had Drake like really dug in.
Yeah, and that's something that I think I'll have more to say on like the Kendrick side of it because
Hmm.
Kendrick then he shifts his focus further down into the like the cultural aspect, which I that's the feeling I got from those jabs at Drake in Euphoria that he really focuses up towards Not Like Us, where it feels like he's really posturing it as it's not that you're mixed, it's that you're stealing a culture that isn't authentic to you. I
Hmm.
because back in Euphoria, Kendrick says I like Drake with the melodies. I like Drake when he's making pop songs. I like when he's making me dance. Just don't try to act tough because that's not you.
Yeah,
You're
that's not where you're
trying
from.
to you're trying to appropriate something that's not authentic to you. And here's how. Um, but with this Drake track, I really liked. I'm trying to find it. A theme that we'll kind of touch on throughout all of this is
Hmm.
you better have some paperwork. You better have some. He says you better have some paperwork, or that is fake tea. We will see that a lot through both sides
Yeah.
of this is there needs to be a lot of evidence because the things that get get thrown out are very intense and
Hmm.
very serious. And we get that first one here on Family Matters with Drake making claims that Kendrick Lamar beats on his fiance, on his wife.
Yeah. Yeah, and he really went in with that idea. And again, Kendrick didn't really end up addressing it very much. He just kind of ignored it, which I guess
Hmm.
is one way to do it. Um, but you're right. Like, and again, Kendrick hurls a lot of accusations at Drake, and I think that line about like, if you don't have the paperwork, that's just fake tea, is true because I mean, not to start like a whole dialogue about misinformation, But in the society that we live in, anything that you read on the internet can easily become misinformation. Like, I could post that I have three toes and people will start believing it if I just say it the right way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so Drake is right. Like, before you start making accusations, you got to have that paperwork. You got to have evidence. Now, I wish Drake followed his own advice on that one, I'll say,
Yes.
but it is a good point nonetheless.
Yes, absolutely. I think he has some I think he has some really witty lines here in this track too. Things like at the beginning of the third verse, Kendrick just opened his mouth. Someone go hand him a Grammy right now is is very funny, and I
Really,
think
yeah.
it ties into that like initial, commercial success versus critical success kind of back and forth that we were focusing on. Um, but where's your uncle at? I want to talk to the man of the house.
And like, I kind of agree for Kendrick. I kind of agree with Drake's line right there, because ever since Kendrick got snubbed with Good Kid, Mad City versus The Heist, which
Hmm.
again should have won the Grammy, there's no denying there. It felt like, okay, whatever album Kendrick releases next has to win a Grammy. Like, there's
Hmm.
no way. It felt like it was already decided after Good Kid, Mad City got snubbed. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like Kendrick could have released the worst album and it still would have gotten a Grammy, because they would have been like, "We owe you," kind of. And then the Grammys just kind of kept stacking up. Of course, To Pimp a Butterfly was incredible and greatly deserving of a Grammy. Um, uh, when they come out 2015, yeah. I mean, I can't say that's my favorite rap album of 2015, but you guys all know I'm biased because I love Lupe Fiasco. But anyway, I do kind of feel like Drake is like, yeah. Anytime Kendrick opens his mouth, doesn't matter what he's saying, people are like, "Oh my god, he's amazing," because of some of the stuff he does. Now, again, Kendrick got to that point because he backed up a lot of the stuff that he was saying with some really powerful projects like To Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City. But I see where he's coming from, where it's like, Drake kind of feels like Kendrick didn't earn all those Grammys. He felt like after that snub, the Grammys felt like they owed him one. And then it just kind of kept stacking up. So I can see it. Like I said, I can see what he's trying to say there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like as a whole, Drake did a good job at responding to a lot of the things that Kendrick had kind of brought up in Euphoria. I think the entirety though of the second verse is where it really loses me, because and I
Hmm.
think that is a big flaw of this track, is because Drake takes his aim off of Kendrick and starts pointing it at everybody else who was making smaller jabs at Drake at this time, like pointing it at Rick Ross, putting it at The Weeknd. Who who cares?
Did he
Like
go
like
after the weekend?
mhm.
Man, Drake is the one. When did he go? What line did he go after him? If you don't
He
mind me.
knew it was smoke when Abel hit us with the serenade. He said, It was
That was
that
pretty
really,
witty.
yeah, that's Abel is the Weeknd's.
The weekend's real name, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I believe the Weeknd had dropped I believe was it a track on the other album by Future and Metro? We Still Don't Trust You. I think they had the
Yeah,
Weeknd
he
on a
was featured
couple of
on it a
tracks.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where he took some shots at Drake. And then Rick Ross had put out a track shooting at Drake that Drake then takes shots at Tim right here. But to me, this has always been a very tightly Kendrick versus Drake kind of beef. I mean, that's a beef that has been brewing for a decade plus.
Hmm.
And now that it's happening, for Drake to take his aim off of Kendrick and to be pointing it at other people, just that frankly don't matter. I mean, what does it matter what Rick Ross is saying right now? Kendrick is obviously heated and he's brewing up something fierce. And we definitely saw that here. Drake just didn't feel as focused as he probably should be, and I think it makes it a weaker diss.
I think I would agree. Um, I think Kendrick. I mean, I think Drake, like during that great Jay-Z and Nas beef, Jay-Z was taking shots at like Prodigy and some of those other guys that were kind of like on Nas's terms, Nas's side. But that sorry. But that whole beef, I apologize, guys. I'm sick, but we have to put this out because of these sick burns. So you'll have to forgive me as we go through this. Um, but some of those disses that Jay Z had, he hurled them at Nas and Prodigy. Um, but the beef was still Jay Z versus Nas. Like no one thinks of it as like, oh yeah, Jay Z versus Nas and Prodigy, or any like it was Jay Z versus Nas. Like this is Drake versus Kendrick. To me, like you can make a line to hit Rick Ross here and there, like on Drop and Give Me 50. It was perfect because Drake was like,
Mhm.
who even cares about Rick Ross? He's 50. Like whatever, man. Your time is up. You know.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel like he really needed to go this hard and dedicate a whole second verse, like you said, to kind of take the scope off of Kendrick.
Yeah.
Um, but again, there's a couple of lines that, again, I thought were witty. Some of them are kind of going to like the problematic area that we're going to go to. But he's like, um, what did he say? Oh, when you put hands on your girl, is it self defense because she's bigger than you?
Hmm.
And it's like again, Kendrick is short. He's shorter than his girl, which
Yeah.
which is funny. Um, Not the allegations of abuse, but the fact that he's funny. Like the fact that he's short. Like I like all the shots that Drake kept taking about him being short, because
Yeah.
again, that's something that's like he's so short. Like it's just I don't know. I can't really explain it, but like he had a lot of witty lines about it, and I don't know if this was on this song or not. Um, do you want to move on to the second song that Drake dropped to talk about what we liked about it, or do we want to talk about what we didn't really like about Family Matters?
Um, we can move on to I say let's stay focused on Family Matters here.
On Family Matters? Okay. So we'll
Yeah.
start talking about what kind of went wrong. And you kind of touched on it with Family Matters, what went wrong in this song. With Drake, calling Tupac, I mean with Drake calling out Rick Ross and like trying to hit all these other guys in the second verse when really he should be focusing on Kendrick.
Hmm.
And to me, the part I was trying to wonder where like it got so personal to where we got
Hmm.
the track like Meet the Grams and Not Like Us, which we'll talk about pretty soon. But I think it has to be on this album. Oh, sorry. Let me talk about the one line that I actually really did like. That again, I wish he went in more on. This is where
Hmm.
he says, "We already know it's 20 versus 1. We already know why you went number 1. It's clearly because of the boy. The honorable thing to do is give me the loot." And you write about forget the big 3. It's only Big D and there's video proof. So here Drake is really flexing to me. And to me, like his whole third verse should have like centered around this right here. Because Drake is right. The only reason why Kendrick's like that made him so big, like he got like 10 million more Spotify listeners in a week, and he jumped from
Hmm.
like 38th artist in the world to like 24th. And the only reason why he got that big was because he mentioned because he specifically called out Drake and J. Cole's first person shooter,
Hmm.
which made it to the top without Future or Metro Boomin. It made it to the top with just Drake because what Drake drops goes to the top. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And so to me, that was strong because Drake's like, no matter how, because again, the whole battle is between the entire scope of this battle is commercial success versus critical success. Like when Drake says, "Oh, Kendrick opened his mouth. Somebody give him a Grammy." Like, he's like making fun of the
Right.
fact that Drake is so like critically successful and Drake hasn't been. But you can
Hmm.
kind of see from both artists that like again, I bet Drake wishes that he had some of Kendrick's critical success. And while Kendrick is obviously doing very well you can't really say that Kendrick doesn't at least um want or seek some of the critical success that Drake has based upon some of the features that he's done, like Taylor Swift, Maroon 5. And here, Drake, it's perfect because Drake is accusing him of wanting that critical success by dissing him, by bringing in Drake's name and dissing him and trying to use it to shoot himself to the top. And that's how we
Mhm.
got there. Because if I can guarantee, if Kendrick did not diss Drake on like that, he would still be sitting at 38. Like
Mhm.
that would not have shot to the top of the charts if it wasn't a diss at Drake. This whole beef, all these tracks that are making Kendrick blow up, again, it's because he's dissing with Drake. If he was dissing with J. Cole, we wouldn't all be talking about it this much. It wouldn't
Mhm.
be as big. And, you know, when Drake says that, forget the big three, it's only me, and there's proof, you know, it's kind of hard because like Drake isn't the number one male artist in the world. That honor belongs to the Weeknd, and he did kind
Mhm.
of attack the Weeknd pretty harshly. Um, but he's still much bigger than Kendrick because no matter how much their beefs like rocket them, Drake is number
Mhm.
six, and Kendrick is probably not going to get there to number six. He's number 24, and again, Kendrick says that he doesn't care, right? Like I don't care about the critical fame and all. I don't care about the commercial success. But again, Drake can just say like, okay, if you don't care about it, why'd you diss me? Why'd you do that song with Maroon 5? Why'd you do that song with Taylor Swift? Like to me, that's and then he says like honorable thing is to give me the loot. To me, that's the strongest part of this entire song. And I wish that's what he was going in on. Like proving like you're saying all this stuff, but you don't actually mean it. You're lying to the people that you say that you're not lying about because you say you're all about the culture.
Mhm.
Well, here you are doing something for dollars,
Mhm.
doing this whole stint for like, how does dissing me help the culture? You're doing this for dollars, for clout, you know.
Eh, But I think, but I think then Kendrick responds to that in a very clear and direct way
Mm.
that I think makes that argument kind of moot.
When he
And
responds, yeah, and we'll get into
yeah,
that.
by the way he responds. But I see where you're saying from Drake making that, making that comment, um trying to like push back on that defense. Um I think it's a good pushback. And I think Drake is even right after that. I think he's very witty too with the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice line. Um we uh we get that you like to put gin in your juice. We get that you think that you're bishop in juice. Is just I love those three lines back to back because they're pushing back on that same kind of point. Um you don't want to be seen with anybody that isn't blacker than you. This air of culture that Drake is kind of pushing back on, it he's claiming is kind of a facade. You want to wear your West Coast inspirations. Um, you want to be them so bad. You want to be Tupac so bad. You want to be
Mm-hmm.
Snoop Dogg so bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's all I think it's all very true and what Drake is saying. And you're right, like Kendrick did have a good response to it. I think I'm just like based upon, and we're gonna start talking about it right now, some of the stuff that we didn't like about Family Matters. Um, and I think based upon some of the stuff, like to me, what Drake chose as like his strongest lines in Matters were not that strong. And I thought this was a song where he said, I know you like to keep it short, so let me paraphrase. Because that line made me laugh out loud. But that might be in his next song. But I thought it was in this song.
In the heart. Um,
I know you like to keep it short, so let me paraphrase. Let me see.
I I do not remember.
Um. Oh yeah. It was at the end of the first verse. We said, I know you like to he said those bars go over Kenny head no matter what I say. I know you like to keep it short, so let me paraphrase. And I thought that
Mm,
was a great line. Like, that was actually, I was like, okay, Drake. Like, because again, Kendrick, everything he says is so critically acclaimed and he's known for being so lyrical. Most of the stuff he says goes over people's head. And Drake is like, well, no matter what I say, it's going to go over your head because you're short.
yeah.
Like,
And,
that was
and
good.
like, that's a witty bar, but I think this is too into it for that bar. Like Kendrick raised it, like this would that I think would have been a better bar in push-ups or tailor-made freestyle.
I think so, yeah.
Because I think Kendrick upped it too much in Euphoria, the way he was so direct with just I hate everything about you.
Yeah, and it
That
feels
for
like,
Drake to
yeah,
just fall back on like, haha, you're
you're
short.
short. Yeah.
Still, it feels like dude, you're are you listening to the like that's the best that you're gonna come up with is just like short jokes here.
Yeah.
And I think he makes up for it. And as much as I do like that line, I just think it's a little too late for it to sting as hard,
I
for
think
it to
you're
be
right.
as good.
I think it would have been much better in Tailor Made if Drake was like wanting to like keep it going. Um and and it could have kind of went along like if he had interpolated it a little bit more with like every time Kendrick opened his mouth, let's give him a Grammy. He got this lyrical stuff, starts talking about like how lyrical he is, and then he says, well, no matter what he says, no matter what I say, it's gonna go over his head. I know you like to keep it short, so let me paraphrase. Like something like that, kind of like kept it in that vein. It would have kind of made
Mhm.
sense. But I see what you mean. It does kind of feel like I hate everything about you, and you're like, well, you're short.
Well, you're short.
Well, you're short. How do you like that? And it's like, okay, yeah, it does feel
Okay.
like, and again, that's my point. Like, I think if Drake had went in harder on those points about like again the commercial versus critical, about the Grammys, about the what is it? You're only popping right now because you're literally using my name to pop off right now. And
Right.
again, that only works for Drake. Like Kendrick can't say the same thing about Drake because Drake didn't start the beef, right?
Right.
Like that only works for Drake to be like, you're literally using my name to pop off because again, Kendrick started the beef.
Mhm.
So, but I guess from here we'll talk about some of the stuff that we didn't like so much about Family Matters.
So, what did you not care for as much on Family Matters?
I think Drake kind of alluded to it a little bit I can't remember if he alluded to it on Taylor Made or on Drop and Give Me 50, but I really didn't like the you beat your wife allegations. Really didn't like those, especially for Drake, who said, like, you better, like, he's the one that said you better have some proof before you make some allegations, some evidence. And it's like, okay, well, where's the proof that you have that Kendrick beats his wife? Like, and at the end, where he's like, you hired a crisis management team to clean up the fact that you beat on your queen. It's like, do you have the receipts for that? Because if you have the receipts for that, like that should have been like the cover art for this album. Also, that is huge. And I feel like we're getting beyond the scope of rap beefs right now because if that's true, that's arrest level. Like that's like, okay, we need to lock Kendrick up if this is actually true. And it's
Right.
like I prefer rap when you were keeping it as like I'm a better rapper than you, right? And to me, like all those things that I was mentioning before about commercial, like Drake could have said like I'm a better rapper than you just because I'm more commercially successful, and just win in on that and be like you got to use my name to get famous. That's why like that winning in that's still personal and that's still about like I'm a better rapper than you.
Mhm.
But it feels like he was taking the scope off of Kendrick and like kind of pointing it at Whitney. And it's like, again, a couple of the lines, like the line about like, is it self-defense when you put your hands on your girl because she's shorter than you? It's like that's a little witty. It's still kind of like I didn't love it because I'm like, again, I don't really think we need to start accusing. To me, you don't need to accuse someone of beating their wife to prove you're a better rapper. I feel like if you're doing that, that's almost kind of like saying, it feels like you're saying like I've run out of content to diss about. So now I'm gonna say something that if it's true will get you arrested. Like it doesn't really
Mhm.
feel like that's not a hip hop like I mean, first of all, that shouldn't be a hip hop thing. And obviously that's a terrible thing, but again, this is not about who's a better person,
Right,
obviously. Beating on your wife on any kind of way is completely and unequivocally wrong. There is no moral high ground or reason where it would ever be okay in that situation.
right,
But again, this is about who's a better rapper. It's not about who's a better person. Like that has nothing to do with who's a better rapper. Because again, that's something that's like, okay, I feel like if you really, really believe that, you should be turning that into the police, not putting it on a diss track.
right. And I feel like Drake even did the personal shot even better earlier in this track because he also makes the claim that Dave Freeze is the father to one of Kendrick's children. He makes that claim earlier on, and that I feel is a more fitting way to go the personal route for
Mm-hmm.
attacking, Kendrick Lamar. And I don't want to be very clear. If that is true, what Drake is saying, that I believe that should come to light. I'm not
Oh
saying
yeah.
I'm unhappy with it being displayed. I think it plays into this really, really gross trend in a lot of hip hop of it just being misogynistic. Because at the end of the day, it's Whitney who is the victim here, and she's being used as a chess piece, as a
Yeah.
one up in this rap feud. That, if this is true, is something that should not be handled in a rap diss.
Yeah. It's just
If
way
that's true,
yeah.
it comes across as gross. And for as big as a get that may be for Drake and his team, that get is at the cost of a woman. A
Mm-hmm.
woman is the one paying the price. Drake is not paying the price. And unfortunately, I don't think Ken if that's true, I don't think really Kendrick Lamar would pay too much of a price just because of a lot of the reactions we've seen from this beef in its entirety. And it's very sad to say. And it's something that we'll probably touch on more as we go throughout this beef as a whole. But I'm on one hand, I can see like the logic of having a bigger gotcha thing to throw at your opponent, in
Mm-hmm.
like the chess match of it all, because Drake's been on the receiving end of this with push his diss with or his beef with Pusha T
Push a
when
T,
he
yeah.
when he dropped the story of Adonis. But I think this plays into a really, really gross trend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad to see it on tracks that are this big and are charting so big, and the allegations are as big as they are. Because it's not just like you had sex with somebody else. It's you're physically assaulting your wife. And that's
Yeah.
just really gross.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Especially because, and then again, it's sad because I've always loved rap music, and I understand this is exactly why some people hate it and do not understand why I like rap music so much. Like, you know, people be like, why are you even covering this? If because rappers have bragged about this kind of thing for a very long time. And I always hate those kind of songs where they're bragging about this before. And I'm pretty sure there's a line Drake has stated before in his songs where he brags about doing something, maybe not like beating on his wife, but something misogynistic and inappropriate to a woman. So for Drake to try to claim the moral high ground
Which
by
we can
being
get
like,
into with
oh
Kendrick.
yeah, we definitely will. Don't like this is not just like a diss like Kendrick is kind of guilty of this as well, very guilty of this. But for him to try to claim the moral high ground in a hip hop beef, it doesn't work because again, like I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but it's like let's pretend that was true for a second. Like, first of all, that would mean Kendrick needs to be in jail. And secondly, that still doesn't mean that you're a better rapper than Kendrick. That just
Mm-hmm.
means that you don't beat your wife and he does. And
Mm-hmm.
again, obviously that would make him a better person, but that's not what the beef is about. And if it
Yeah.
does make, like, to me, the best person, if you found this out to be true, would be I turn this into the police right away. Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if we found that like, oh, this is true, the best person would have turned it into the police right away. And if you found out like, oh hey, we tried to dig some research and there's some things like Kendrick might beat on his wife, but we don't really know for sure. Like to me, a truly good person would be like, okay, well, I'm not going to put that in the song if it's to me a truly good person wouldn't even like try to put this in the song, but like if Drake asked his team to like, hey, dig up some dirt on Kendrick, and what they found are some like abuse allegations, it's like, okay, well, that's really serious. Either you guys need to turn that into the police, or if there's not enough, like if there's not enough evidence, it's just like whispers, then I'm just not going to reference it at all. Like to me, that's what a truly good, like morally high person would do, because then you're just accusing someone of something they didn't do, which again could and should get them arrested if it is true. It creates so many layers of problems. And it makes us
Mm-hmm.
not talk about now we're not talking about is Kendrick a good rapper? Is Drake a good rapper? How is this diss? Now we're talking about holy crap, is Whitney okay? Is Kendrick beating on his wife? Is Drake taking false information and putting it out there? Like it kind of shifts the focus away from the whole rap beef.
And you know what? I'm even like for myself, I'm comfortable with art, like music, being used as a beacon to shine a light on really unsavory behavior, really criminalistic things like this. Like if the intent was to shine a light on like systematic misogyny and abuse of women, or this trend even on Kendrick Lamar, that could be really interesting to get people talking about it, just to shine a light on it, to
Mm-hmm.
discredit, to knock him from his pedestal. But I don't think Drake even sticks with that narrative. That's something that has to be proven outside of the track as well. And through the rest of the disc with the Heart Part 6, sure, he kind of brings up the fact that like Kendrick never really responds to that claim at all, but it the way Drake uses that information just feels like a chest piece.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and it's a chest piece that is at no cost to himself or his reputation, and is really at the end of the day uh hurting Whitney.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's hurting women in general because now it's like now it makes those claims look even more trivial, right? Like again, we're kind of getting but see what I mean? Like we're not even talking about the beef anymore. Now we're just getting into like a whole big situation about like, abuse in general. And it's like, after this Drake, it's going to be that much harder for anyone who's going through that to be able to
Hmm.
comfortably come forward because Drake
Hmm.
just essentially made fun of it in this beef with Kendrick, and we don't actually know if it's true. And
And I
especially if it ends up being not true at all in the beginning, and like an investigation happens and Kendrick is obviously cleared and acquitted. Well, again, the investigation should have never happened in the first place. It's the whole point, because really, if it didn't actually occur, it's just going to make it that much more difficult in the future for anyone that's going through it.
Right, because as at the time of recording right now, we have not heard anything from Whitney. Kendrick Lamar has not responded to this. Like nobody has said anything. And in the greater conversation of this rap battle, this feels like a forgotten part of it. All of the focus seems to be on Kendrick attacking Drake, and it's really sad too that like nobody else, it seems, in like the larger conversation, is asking for like
Is this true?
validation that Whitney is okay, or that it's true or not. And it's just another example of like a sacrifice for hip hop, and it's really sad to see. I
And
wonder too
yeah.
though, do you think the stakes were raised like this, and it became like this because of what happened to Drake with the Pusha T diss. Like, do you think the story of Adidon kind of changed hip hop disses
A
by making
little,
it this like one-upsmanship of like secrets that are coming to light instead of
yeah.
a more lyrical and witty and clever, you know, rap battle?
Yeah, because again, that's like, and that's the difference to me between like publicity stunts and art, right? Like, art is dissing someone for how short they are, or talking about how much more commercially successful you are, or
Mhm.
using just a lyrical jab to like really get at someone. Publicity is like, oh, let me see if I can find a picture of them like snorting crack, or
Mhm.
beating on their wife, or doing all this stuff that will make people be like, oh, whoa, like a gotcha. Like, it's clickbait, it feels like.
Mhm.
And it's like that's where like the fame comes into the rap beef, because it's like, again, this is it kind of feels like this is supposed to make people like be like gotcha, like, like be like, oh, exposed. It feels so not hip hop. And like looking at like the Drake, like looking back at like the Jay-Z and Nas beef, and like Nas has some pretty intense lines, but
Mhm.
he didn't really get, I'm not gonna say like he didn't get personal, but he didn't get accusatory, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because
Mhm.
Nas never said like, yeah, Jay-Z, and that third son that you never knew, or and that and the fact that you beat Beyonce, or I saw you creeping around those young girls. Like, Nas basically is like, everyone at Rockefeller is gay. And that has its own issues. But at the time, like, it was just a diss on Jay-Z, and he used a lot of clever lyrical jabs at Jay-Z and Rockefeller Records to knock them all down, right? And
Mhm.
this feels like I said, this feels like Drake is like, okay, I'm kind of running out of stuff. Can someone go get me some dirt? And to me, the worst part is like, you had good material in front of you that you could have expounded upon. You didn't need to be like, yo, let me go get some dirt.
Right.
And especially because then Kendrick throws that all in your face in his response, and his response kind of makes the issue that, like, is a good response, but his response makes the issue that we're talking about even worse.
Mhm.
And it really, I don't think it ends up being a good look for hip hop in general. Um, and to me, it's like, I mean, I can't even say like it's time for this beef to end, because like, you kind of got to make sure that this is not true. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, otherwise, because if what both of these guys are saying, then both Kendrick and Drake deserve to be locked up,
Mhm.
if what they're
Yeah.
saying is true. And if anyone's out there listening to the song and be like, oh, well, it's just like a line in a rap song. It's not like really what's happening. It's like, okay, well, then why reference it? If it's not
Mhm.
really, because like if it's not really happening, then it doesn't mean anything, right?
Mhm.
Like, if it's just like, rappers just say
Um,
that. It's just one of those things that rappers just say. And it's like, okay, but he's name calling people, right? This isn't
right.
like Eminem back in Eminem has said some really like misogynistic, terrible stuff back in the 90s. And you could say, like, oh, that's just what rappers do, because like that was what he was saying. He wasn't name dropping anyone, he wasn't accusing anyone. He was just saying, like, this is kind of what I do, like rap, 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 rap. Here, Drake
Mhm.
is literally accusing Kendrick of doing something that would make all in the interest of putting himself in a better light, because he's like, well, I don't beat my wife, so I'm a better person than you, Kendrick. And like we talked about a little bit before, it's like, I feel like if you have to accuse someone of beating their wife so that way you can look like the better person, you have
Mhm.
set the bar for morality extremely dangerously low.
And even then, like the best, like classic rap beefs, the best ones have never been like an issue of like moral grandstanding. Like
Hmm.
it's never been an issue of like, oh well, you're just an awful human being because of your like what is this, a rap beef or is this investigative journalism? Like,
Right.
like what is it? Is
Right.
is Drake a PI?
Right.
Like what is this right here? And I'm not saying for me that you can't get personal because again, I think the Dave Freeze line earlier was better. It was, to me, it was a good blend of personal and a jab solely at Kendrick here. Like that's a personal jab at Kendrick. But when you come in with these big accusations, I just don't like, how long were you sitting on it?
Yeah.
How long do you
Brings
know
up other
this? How
issues. Yeah.
long, if this wasn't a beef, would you have said anything?
Yep. And like I said, you could argue that, like, okay, Drake, like, ever since Kendrick released Euphoria, Drake asked his team to go dig up some dirt, and this is what they found. And again, to me, like, if I'm like, who's the better, like, to me, again, to me, this doesn't answer who's the better rapper, first of all, accusing this
Hmm.
doesn't answer who's the better rapper because, like, rapping has never been associated with being a morally good person. Like, how many people are
Hmm.
like, the best people in the world, rappers. Like, this is not a competition on, like, who's not breaking the law. This this is a rap beef. Like, who's the better rapper? That's what we're trying to figure
Hmm.
out here. And
Hmm.
it's like, again, to me, if I received this information that's like, some people think Kendrick has beaten on his wife, it's like, is this substantiated? Like, if they're substantiated with witness testimony and stuff, we may need to turn this over to the police. That's what a good person does. Or if it's not substantiated, this has nothing to do with why I'm a better rapper than Kendrick. If I believe I'm a better rapper than Kendrick, it's not because I'm like, I don't beat my wife. That is not a reason why I'm a better rapper than Kendrick. And especially if you don't really know that it's true because you don't have the receipts.
Hmm.
It's very sad because again, it's kind of I always say, like, I don't really like when and this isn't politics obviously. But I don't like when politics and art get kind of like, I don't like when they get mixed. Not that, like, art can't comment on politics. Like, as an artist, if you feel the need to comment on politics or something like that, by all means. Macklemore just released a song that's, like, really commenting on something that he feels is important. But when politics get dragged into art, like when you make a statement in something and it becomes part of this, to me, that's kind of like Drake just dropped a magnet for a whole bunch of other issues, whole bunch of other things that have nothing to do with the Kendrick and Drake beef. Now, if he thought this was really true and, like, he made like a really hard hitting song about like misogyny and hip hop and misogyny in the world, that would have felt like, it would have felt completely different, and it would have been, potentially the right move. I can't even really say if it'd be the right move, but it wouldn't feel like trying to use someone else's suffering to make your platform higher.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like, if this is really happening, then Drake just used the fact that Whitney gets beat to make himself look better.
Hmm.
And that does not make you look better.
Yeah, I don't think that's something that, at least to me, it doesn't stand out as something that makes me think you're a better rapper. But as to whether Drake is the person to be calling out misogyny or not, I really do not think he is the one, especially considering all the shots that Kendrick fired at him that he would then later respond to with the Heart Part 6.
Yeah. So I guess it's time to move. Do you have anything else to say about Family Matters? Because, like, there's the one line where he was like talking to Whitney and he was like, drop it, Whitney, drop it for Drake or shake it for
Hmm.
Drake. And it was like, I mean, like, that was to me, because again, it was a good reference, but again, I like the jabs, I like the lyrical, I like the wittiness, I like the line, these bars go over K head no matter what I say. I know you like to keep it
Hmm.
short, so let me paraphrase. Like, that's probably my favorite line in the whole song, and it's sad just because it came a little too late, and it also kind of it ends up being overshadowed by all these intense allegations that Drake just ends up throwing out.
I think Drake got pushed very quickly in this rap beef into a defensive stance that I don't think he could even really, like, he spent a lot of time responding and not as much time jabbing. And I don't think Drake worked as well when he's responding, when he's on the defensive here. And I think Kendrick just worked too well, pushing him into a defensive stance. And so while I like Family Matters as a whole, like, I think it's a decent follow-up to Euphoria. I think he just gets too outplayed by Kendrick with releases that would lead us into the Heart Part 6.
Yeah. Yeah. So we might as well transition into the Heart Part 6 right now. Especially because like I think you're right. I think if we look back at this beef and end up deciding who won or not, I think this is the part where Drake kind of lost. If, like I
Yeah.
said, if we end up saying Kendrick won, to me, this is the part where I'll say Drake really lost. And I think he had a chance to put himself in a very strong position. But again, he didn't need, I think the entire track was brought down rather than brought up by all these allegations. To me, that
Right.
was the glaring thing that was wrong with it. Um, but now let's take a look at the Heart Part 6. So this song, it kind of, some people say that like they think this song might have been like meant to end the beef. And I'm not really sure because it sounds like Drake is like, it sounds like on this song, Drake is like, jab, jab, jab. By the way, if you don't respond, it's okay. But jab, jab, jab. Okay. If you don't respond, it's okay. Like you don't have to respond to this, but here's the last thing. Like it kind of felt like he was like trying to make sure that he could get the last laugh. So I think Kendrick is gonna respond to this. But let's talk about, is there anything that stood out to you that you really liked about the Heart Part 6 and Drake's response?
I really like the title. I thought the
Yeah, I was
title
about
is
to say.
a really good, I think it's a really good mind game. I think this is a mind game with no backfire for me. Um, Whereas, like, I liked the mind game on one hand with like the Tupac and Snoop thing, but it, because he used the AI generated voice route, it really fell short and it kind of backfired, I think, to him. This, it feels genius because there's been rumors of Kendrick having an album coming out soon that would release. So to get ahead and steal like this famous ongoing track that Kendrick has been adding to over time, I think is a really great move to get under his skin.
Yeah,
I just wish that he kind of showed up in the song itself.
yeah. Because again, I thought it was a great, I agree with the name because now if Kendrick has an album coming out, he can't really name it the Heart Part 6, can he? Like if he has
Mhm.
this track on there, he can't really name it the Heart. So I thought the name of it was good. And like that's kind of like, I'll just say this, the title of your song should not be the strongest aspect of your song.
Yeah.
Let's like, that's just that's just basic
Yeah.
facts. The title of your song should not be the strongest part. He had
So
some
I
pretty good lines.
so I guess, yeah, was there anything that really stood out for you?
Like he mentioned, he tried to play off of Kendrick's A minor reference and Not Like Us, which was hilarious. But anyway, and he was like, you mentioned an A minor, but you got to B sharp and tell fans who was it. And if you thought you left D flat, D major, I'll slit your throat with the razor. And like that line, it's probably one of the stronger ones, but it kind of shows just how Drake is not really on Kendrick's lyrical level. Like I feel like
Yeah.
in this beef, Drake has had a lot of nice witty jabs, right? Witty
Yeah.
jabs. But Kendrick has brought the lyricism every time. He brings
Yes.
like, give that to your core fans and see how they stomach it. that it
I,
like Kendrick brought the lyricism, and this kind of felt like Drake trying to copy the lyricism. Like you didn't
yeah.
really like if it was truly lyrical, you didn't need to mention the A minor part because people would have known when they heard Kendrick's last song. He should have just made a line about like they got a B sharp and see this for what it really is. And then when he said you thought you left D flat, D major, I guess he's talking about himself, where he's saying that like because he says like it's only the big D, and he's saying you thought you left me flat, but really I'm major, and it's not that bad of a line. But again, it feels like a little bit trying too hard with the A minor, like just by mentioning A minor. I feel like true lyricists don't even mention that. Like they would just say like according to you, like according to you, like you got a B sharp because it would have had that chord reference in there. It's just again, it feels kind of like Drake's like, well, I can be lyrical too. And everybody's like, well, not
Does
like Kendrick though.
does it ruin it a little bit? And correct me if I'm wrong. I know you're better with music theory. Isn't there no B sharp? Like B sharp is just isn't that just a C?
Yeah, technically. Like you
Like
can see a B
technically, like
sharp in
there's no,
music.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're just playing a C, which
Yeah.
to me, like, and I think that's like for me, all of my problems, all the attempts that Drake has to combat accusations that Kendrick is throwing at him, he does so in such a clumsy way that simultaneously, like, even if he does, shoot back or try to shoot back, it still ends up hurting him in a way. Because
Yeah.
now when I see that, I just think that's not a real chord. Like you're just playing
Or
a that's not a it doesn't exist in music theory. That's a C.
or
You're just trying to
again,
copy.
if you're gonna do that, like do it well and acknowledge that. Like, according to you, I've done all this stuff, but people gotta be sharp to really see what's going on or see the truth. Like, like Kendrick, like Drake could have played with it to
Hmm.
make it his own and really capture the lyricism. But I don't think Drake knows that B sharp is just a C.
Right.
Like that's kind of the whole point. It's like it feels like if like I think that's why people I mean, I'm not gonna say like that's like an accusation of ghostwriting, but it feels like someone was like, hey man, you could say like B sharp, and he's like, oh okay, cool, I'll put that down. And is like, hey, do you know what a B sharp is? It's like, it doesn't really matter, it goes with the song.
It doesn't matter.
Eh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like because again, you could have like if it was me, I would have used that. Like because I know a B sharp is well, first of all, I would never want to be in Drake's position for this whole thing. But again, like you can use the lyricism a little bit, but like you said, it does just kind of feel like he doesn't really know what B sharp means or what it actually is. So, and
Right.
that was supposed to be one of the better lines in the song.
Right.
So,
So
um,
as for things that obviously we're kind of running out of positives for the Heart Part 6. So where where does it fall apart for you?
ooh, to me, it so I like the line where Drake says, "I'm petty with dedication." Um, because to me, like this whole beef is starting to get very petty. I feel like Drake, like if Kendrick started the beef, I feel like Drake started the pettiness. And like I feel like Kendrick definitely perpetrated a lot of the pettiness. And I feel like Drake is still perpetrating it on this track. And I like when he says I'm petty with dedication because it's kind of like a play on that, like I'm dedicated to this. But there's so many lines that end up hurting himself. Like to me, the one that just stands out more than anything, where he says, I don't want to fight with a woman beater. It feeds your nature.
Hmm.
And it's like, I don't think Drake realized that he just called himself a woman, is what it sounds like. He says, like, I don't want to fight
Hmm.
with a woman beater because it feeds your nature. It's like, okay, well, if you're fighting with Kendrick and if you're saying that he beats women, does that mean that you're a woman?
Are you trying?
Like
Yeah.
it's just so much stuff that he says just kind of like falls off and like hits you back. And it's like, I'm not saying that like on this track he almost needed a ghostwriter, Well, he kind of needed someone to say like, "Hey, man, I know you're excited to like really respond, but that was whack."
Yeah. And I think that's just another instance of him like trying to say something, but it can be too easily interpreted in a way that's kind of clowning on Drake in the meantime, that that's the interpretation that a lot of people are going to take.
Yeah, and but so I think that's the one that stands out to me. But to me, the worst part, because I don't know, that to me is just a perfect example of everything falling on itself. And to me, the worst part is definitely in the middle, where Drake basically says that like the only reason why Kendrick is calling him a pedophile is because Kendrick himself got molested, which he
Yeah,
referenced on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And to me, it's like once you go there, like I guess Drake is trying to say like Kendrick is putting his trauma on Drake, but it does not sound right. It so does not sound right. It sounds worse. It sounds like you're making fun of the fact that Kendrick got molested as a child and is really not helping with all of Kendrick's accusations.
which on two fronts. Number one, if that was true, how do you think that would bring people to your side?
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
how does that, how does that say, oh yeah, you're right, Drake. Let's clown on the victim of sexual assault and
For real.
molestation. Like,
What?
that's the stupidest, like such a leap in dumb logic there. And then number two, he's referencing a Kendrick Lamar track, Mother I Sober, that me, like a lot of other people on the internet, have since gone back to re-listen to try to confirm with what we remember. And in that track, Kendrick Lamar is not saying that he was molested. He is saying that he wasn't. And when he tried to tell his mom that he wasn't molested, his mom didn't believe him because of her own experience with sexual assault as a child. It's a song talking about this generational Black trauma that he is going on. And the specific words that Drake's use are posturing it as you're the one who got molested, Kendrick. So number one, he's wrong. He's incorrect about the song he's referencing. And number two, it wasn't a good strategy to begin with.
It's
So
like even if he, yeah, it's like I feel like it's just worse if Kendrick was molested because you don't do that. I don't care what kind of rap beef you're in. That
and
is not
especially
okay.
And then especially because we haven't said it outright, and we'll go into it more at the Kendrick side. Kendrick makes shots at Drake, calling him a sexual predator and a pedophile. If
Mm-hmm.
that is your defense for being a pedophile, is like, I'm not a pedophile. You're just saying I am because you were assaulted as a child. That is just so gross and disgusting that eh, I'm not saying outright that Drake is. I'm just saying from everything that Kendrick has said, Drake did the worst possible job to try to defend himself from the allegations of being close to children. Like saying the Epstein aisle, this Epstein angle is what I expected. Why why would you expect that, Drake?
Yeah,
Why do you expect people to say you're a pedophile?
that's not a good thing.
That's not
Okay.
a good thing. That doesn't make you tough, man. That doesn't make you, I don't know, man. That doesn't make you a winner.
And for him to say like, just for clarity, I feel disgusted. I'm too respected. If I was with young girls, I promise I'd have been arrested. Someone
Hmm.
pointed out that like, especially for someone of Drake's like stature and
Hmm.
fame, it's actually very reasonable to conclude that if he was with young girls, he would not have been arrested because
Exactly.
it's very difficult. Not it's very difficult for abuse and pedophilia to come to light in the first place. Let
Hmm.
alone if someone is a rapper with millions of dollars, millions of resources to either shut the victim up, pay them off, or intimidate them into never saying anything. So like you can't really promise that you would have been because you haven't. Like
Yeah.
that's just not
But
a good like just the best
he's
line is to just say like I haven't or just prove it. Like that's not what I've done. Don't
right.
like reference things that like, bro, if I did this, I would have been arrested. It's like that's what someone who hasn't been arrested for it would say. Like,
Exactly. Especially with like the people he's bringing up. Like he mentions Jeffrey Epstein in this track, and Jeffrey Epstein very famously was a rich, powerful man
oh yeah.
who had a secret life hidden from the public of molesting and sexually assaulting children. So Drake is disproving himself in this track, and it's over a gross, like a
I
really
know.
gross allegation.
It's like
Not
over
saying
this.
that Kendrick throwing it is gross. I mean, like if you called me a pedophile, I would not. I would do everything in my power. I would be showing receipts. I'd be like, here, look at my phone, please. Like
Yeah.
Drake is not treating that allegation with any degree of seriousness. And the fact that he plays it off so comically and then says, like, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to beef no more. You're taking this too seriously. And is backing off is just gross and disgusting and really
Mm,
stupid. And
it makes it sound like there's something to hide.
yeah, yeah, man.
And
Like,
again, it's not like I kind of referenced this earlier with like if we didn't have any knowledge of Drake and his exploits, I guess I should say, there wouldn't really be an angle for this. Right? Like Drake accused Kendrick of beating his wife without any kind of evidence to like not even evident like any kind of anything to support that, like not even a Kendrick giving her a intense look while they're out in public. Like there's a video where Liam Hemsworth is like telling Miley Cyrus to behave, like like stuff like there's nothing like that indicating that Kendrick maybe has put his hands on his wife. But how many videos of there are the internet where Drake is at a concert, pulls a girl on stage and is like, "Hey, look at you, honey. How you doing?" And then he's like, "How
mm-hmm,
old are you?" And she's like, 16 or like 17. And he's like, "Oh, man."
mm-hmm.
It's like,
Oh, you're so bad.
nah, it's like
Like,
again, it's like with Deshaun Watson. Like people were willing to take his side and be like, "Okay, you know what? Maybe he didn't do this with all these massage therapists." And then
mhm.
they revealed it's like, well, I mean, like he did have sex with some of his massage therapists. And it's like, oh, well, you didn't like, okay, well, that changes everything because now it's like we don't really know, do we? Um,
Yeah, I think that's a problem. Like back to some of our initial points we were looking at. And Drake is just doing a really, really bad job at trying to prove his innocence here. Because I mean, we've got historical proof at the very least of him grooming and talking with teenage girls, because there was that famous, for whatever reason, he chose to bring it up here.
oh
But
my
there's
God.
that very famous example of him talking with Millie Bobby Brown for an extended period of time, giving him or giving her boy advice, amongst other things. And just even if that was all it is, that is so grossly inappropriate for a 30 something man who has no connection with Millie Bobby Brown to just be so in her life like a best friend, giving her advice like that in a non-public, very private way, in which I have to look up how old she was at the time, but I'm pretty sure I thought she was like 13 or something
It
when
was
that
in 2008. She was 14.
she was 14, a 14-year-old. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm 26. I would like, I have nothing in common with a teenager these days, man. Like, how would I talk to a t it's
Just to quote, there was a controversial video of Drake with it was a 17-year-old girl on
Hmm.
stage during a May concert in 2010 that muddies the claim of him that he never looks twice at a teenager. Drake said, the quote, "I can't go to jail yet, man. You're 17. Why do you look like that? You're thick. Look at all this. I don't know if I should feel guilty or what, but I had fun. I liked the way your felt against my."
Jesus Christ, man.
Now, he didn't say exactly what you might be thinking when I blanked out those phrases, but I'm not going to say exactly what he said.
But
Um, but that's not something that you say to a teenager.
mm-mm. I mean, what did he say in his song God's Plan? What did he say? High school pics, you was even bad then?
Yeah.
Like, and this is why even if all we've seen was the worst of it, which I personally do not feel, I feel like if that's how you are going to behave publicly, you are willing to behave worse privately.
Hmm.
But I'm not a journalist. I have no proof of anything, so I'm not going to make claims like that. But even if that was the worst of everything, it's still really gross, really disgusting behavior on Drake's part. And he does a really awful job at like shooting back here.
It kind of feels like he's saying like, okay, so I got close to some teenagers. That doesn't mean like I had sex with them. Like, and
Right.
again, and he's like, and then again, he tries to double down on his beating, um, Kendrick beating his wife by saying like, why is Whitney not, um, addressing the allegations? And again, this is the part where I'm like, this is where hip hop beefs got too, like I said, I don't know if personal is the right word, but almost too real. Because, like, if we're saying that, like, Drake's line in God's Plan might be an indication of how he feels about teenagers, well, Kendrick Lamar has a line in a song called B Boys by DJ Khaled that seems to indicate that he's okay with beating on his girl. Let me see. B Boys, it was a line where Kendrick Lamar specifically says, which verse is it? Yeah. He says, oh, this isn't the one. Sorry, it's not called B Boys. It's with J. Cole. J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and DJ Khaled. DJ Khaled. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's gonna hit me. They Ready. They Ready is the song. Sorry about that. So in this song, Kendrick Lamar says, pick up my coat if oh, he says some a lot of intense stuff here. But he says, pick up my coat. If you let it drag like RuPaul, I'll drag you to the floor. He says, um, living my life on oops, I can't even say this. Um, but basically he talks about essentially he's describing beating on a woman.
Hmm.
Um, And it's like, so if we're gonna say like, oh well, Drake and God's Plan, you did say that, you were bad back then in high school, so it's not really helping with your whole pedophilia allegations. It's like Drake can come back and be like, well, Kendrick, you did say that you were willing to put your foot on the neck of a woman and break it, so that's not really um discharging the beating on your wife allegations. Like it's
Right.
and that's the part where the hit like these accusations are too almost real for this to really be just like a hip hop beef because it's
Right.
like if there's any truth to this, both of you guys need to be in jail and all your music needs to be taken off of Spotify, right?
Ooh,
And it's
that
like, but you can't use like what they say in their songs to say that like, yeah, this indicates this is what they do because in that case that would make it true for both of them.
hmm
So, and to me, that's kind of and I think that's a problem that Drake started. So I guess he shoulders the blame, but I think Kendrick perpetrated it in his responses. And I still think it was a great beef, but again, I like, to me it would be unequivocally if Kendrick, we'll talk about Kendrick in a little bit. But like it feels like Kendrick's response to Drake saying that Kendrick beats on his wife was, Kendrick was like, "Well, you're a pedophile." And it's
Hmm.
like, again, this is what we're doing, trying to claim moral superiority by
Right.
saying what the other person does to try to make yourself a better person.
Yeah. Yeah, like you say, I don't think he it's it's not that Drake's response here falls short because he doesn't like follow up pressure and trying to respond to the things that he had brought up before. He just does it in a very uncreative way and without any real like even in his voice in it, not to look too into it, but he doesn't sound motivated. Like he doesn't
No,
sound like engaged or how like in Family Matters, like he sounded heated. Like he sounded like he was ready to fight. And in The Heart Part 6, he sounds just deflated with all of his comments. And the irony of it with him saying, you know, him begging Kendrick to drop quicker, like, why are you taking so long to drop? And then at the very end being like, I know you've got at least like 10 more tracks. I don't even care how many you drop. Is like it's like moral superiority should stay out of rap dissing, and Drake did an awful job at denying or because even like he even has like a big revelation here where he's telling where he's saying that the whole claim that he has another kid that Kendrick dropped in one of his disses was fake, fabricated, that he fed it to Kendrick.
that he leaked to him. Yeah,
And where's the proof? Like he dedicates so much of this track to trying to say like, "Oh, we set you up big time." If I were him, literally the second I hear Kendrick's track that, you know, he's bringing up that like the plan that I fed him, I'm dropping something on Instagram. I'm dropping another track of my own to be like, "Hey, look, we punked you. We
yeah,
got
like
you. Look
psych.
at you, you idiot. You're not even doing any real research." But just to say like, "Ah, we plotted. You're dumb."
Again, that should be the cover art. The email that says
Yeah,
like, "Yo, if we're gonna make Kendrick think that Drake has a secret daughter and he's gonna use it, and they're all gonna celebrate on it." Like
right.
that should be the cover art for this song. Or he should have dropped it on your Instagram. Because Drake tweeted out that like, "Oh, if I had a daughter, someone better come tell me about it." And it's like, and that's one thing to be like, "Yeah, no, I don't have a secret daughter." But then to say that like that tweet doesn't sound like, "Yeah, we planted that story so Kendrick would grab it." That
Hmm.
tweet just sounds like, "Nah, I ain't got no secret daughter that I don't know about."
Right.
And it's like, when I look at this song, there's no witty jabs in it. That's how I know this has gone too far. Like, that's how I know that we've left hip hop beef, because now Drake is just trying to defend his reputation by saying, like, "Yeah, I don't sleep with underage women. Um, but I bet you still beat on your wife because Whitney hasn't denied it yet."
Hmm.
And there's no, like I said, the most intense, the wittiest line is one that he kind of like is trying to go off of Kendrick, but doesn't realize that B sharp is not really a note. And in the last line, he says, "And Whitney, you can hit me back if you need a favor. And when I say hit you back, it's a lot safer."
Hmm.
And it's like, to me, like there was even one beef where Kodak Black had a beef with Nipsey Hussle, right?
Hmm.
And it wasn't a beef with Nipsey Hussle. When Nipsey Hussle passed away, right?
Hmm.
Kodak Black was like, "Man, that's really sad. Hey, Nipsey's girl, you busy?" Like openly hitting on her like the week
Hmm.
of his death. And T.I. commented and was like, "Hey man, you out of pocket. I would just say give an apology because that was whack."
Hmm.
And then Kodak Black was basically like, "Shut up, old man, before I go impregnate your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And then his Ti's daughter was like, okay, first of all, you look like a cockroach, so no. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the way that it feels like they're just kind of using women as like chess pieces. Like Drake is openly hitting on Whitney, which again, to me, like that's not a diss, that's not a flex because we all know she's gonna reject you. Like she's never gonna do this. I don't feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it brings back the same images of Kodak Black being like, "Yeah, Ti, I'm gonna get with your daughter," and his daughter is like, "No, you're not," and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, now you're completely hollow. And again, it's like, why are we using
Right.
women as chess pieces in a hip hop beef? Like, again, I can't remember. Well, I mean, I guess Tupac kind of did with the Biggie beef. Um, but I think that's just a sad state of the culture when this is what you have to resort to get a diss track out.
It just
And that's
it
how it feels like.
when they use women as a tool for one-upsmanship and victory, it takes from away from any kind of lyrical skill or personal jabs that you could have at each other. And you mentioned Kodak Black. We'll get into that more. I think Kendrick does more of a job trying to posture himself on a higher moral high ground, but he had Kodak Black on featured in tracks after Kodak Black was he pled guilty to first degree assault and battery.
Oh, Kendrick did a song with Kodak Black?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, that's okay, disappointing. But again,
Which
and again, the sad part is like when I'm talking about like Kodak Black, like again, based upon his, everyone was like all appalled at what Kodak Black said, and I'm like, have you guys like ever listened to his music? Like, do you actually listen to it? Because this is right on par with the stuff that he says in his songs. Like, I am not surprised at all that he's openly hitting on a widowed woman and threatening to, impregnate a man's daughter because this is what he does. This is literally what he talks about in his songs. Like, it's not really a surprise.
mhm,
But to me, like, I don't know. I feel like I kind of expect more from Drake and Kendrick in this beef. And
mhm.
these feel like petty accusations. And I feel like this entire song, like, again, we started so strong with dropping Give Me 50. What a great song. And and again, we'll go into when we talk about the Kendrick, but it feels like if this is where the beef ends, it's it's still a good beef, but it definitely went out with a whimper. Like it kind of like
Specific
crashed.
specifically on Drake's part. Because I
Yeah.
think if even if this is exactly how it ends, there's nothing else released. I think Kendrick comes out very strong at the end of all of this. But Drake, for as much as he wants, as he says he wants heat and he can handle heat, he very clearly cannot handle any degree of heat because the second it comes thrown his way, he doesn't know how to react and just is like, stop being so mean. Goodbye.
Right? And it's like in a lot of, the accusations that Drake hurled at Kendrick, Kendrick just said like, "Okay, you're a liar." But Kendrick didn't really prove that Drake was lying. He just kind of said like, "Look at the liar stepping up." And it's like
Mhm.
again, Drake felt like he needed to like prove that Kendrick was lying, and not going to jail is not proof that Kendrick is lying. Can we
Yeah.
just like can we be clear on that? Like that's
Right.
not proof. Just say that he's lying.
Yeah, Drake has way too, if that's true, he has way too much trust in the justice system,
Way too much.
which does not exist for people of that level of caliber
Which
or
again,
historically black men. Like,
and if
what is
that's
he
what
talking about?
right, and I feel like if that's true, and Drake has that much trust in the justice system, that just goes back to Kendrick's point and shows how out of touch with the culture that he actually is.
Right.
Because he would know
Which,
that, like, yeah.
yeah, and he brings up some great points that I can't wait to dig in further. But was there any kind of like wrapping up points you had regarding either of these tracks, uh, Family Matters or the Heart Part 6?
when I first listened to The Heart Part 6, I did like Drake's flow on it better, and I feel like he sounded more comfortable, kind of like I like the track better, I think, than
Mhm.
Family Matters. And I kind of like this style. But once I started listening to the lyrics, I was like, this is just sad. It's literally like I'm not like when I listen to this track, I'm not like, yeah, get him. I'm literally depressed. Like, I'm like, dude, you're talking about Kendrick's. You think you're talking about Kendrick being molested as a child, and you're saying that's why he thinks you're a pedophile? I'm like,
Right.
this is sad. This is depressing, Drake.
Yeah.
Not only is it a gross allegation, but it's like it doesn't feel like a one up yet.
Hmm.
It definitely feels like I'm bleeding over here. Um, I don't even know how to describe it. It just
Hmm.
so I think Family Matters was stronger just because it still had the wittiness, even though he was
Hmm.
starting to get into the allegation territory that I thought was pretty whack. And I am sorry to see the beef kind of end like this, which is it feels like we're heading towards an ending. Um and like
Hmm.
if it turns in someone once pointed out this like we got like a whole Drake and Kendrick collaborative album based upon the
We
diss tracks.
we got a
And we
solid
essentially
EP
do.
out of it. Yeah.
But like if this like some people think that it's gonna like turn into like a tour or like a joint album or something, like when they make up the beef, I'm like, if it does, they either one does not deserve it. Like
This
they don't
is.
deserve to make money off of this,
Hmm.
is my thought. Like if it's a Drake and Kendrick tour, and they come I'm not going. I'm not buying. I'm not streaming a Drake and Kendrick album where you guys escalated your beef by accusing another one of pedophilia and spousal abuse. No. just,
Ooh.
just no.
Ooh, but if they're playing Not Like Us, I'm going. I'm going in a heartbeat.
I will go for Not Like Us and then leave. What do you
Uh,
think overall about this track compared to Family Matters?
much worse in every regard. Uh, I I like the flow less. I like. I mean, I think I've been pretty clear about how I feel about the way. Like he's not. I don't think he's like lyrically sharp at all. Like
Nope.
he's very flat. He's not witty,
D is
and
flat.
yeah,
D flat.
and
Now that's a
and
note.
he's D flat. That's an actual note. And the fact that he says this like in the outro, it's so stupid. He says at the very beginning, I'm not gonna lie, this was some good exercise. Like it's good to get out, get the pen working. Like, what did you exercise, buddy? Like you didn't do anything.
Drake the private investigator.
You would be a worthy competitor if I was really a predator. Like, dude, just
Please just
stop.
stop referencing your like
Just
just
stop.
stop.
Just stop, Drake. Just take the L and
Yeah, I think Drake needs to take the L on this. Well, I mean, I don't want to say that for sure because we haven't got to our episode where we're crowning the winner yet. Um, but if this is the only
on
I
this
guess I'll
track.
say if this is the only diss track that Drake releases and he doesn't follow this up and Kendrick doesn't respond and it ends from here, I feel like this is kind of Drake waving the white flag.
Yeah.
But
But we'll get into that more on another time.
yeah,
Do you have any concluding thoughts with these?
I'm just sad. I mean, I listened to this track right before we did the episode. And now, after talking about it, I'm just even more sad that this is how it ended, that it even got to this point. So,
Hmm.
I guess I'm gonna listen to something a little bit more hype and not as
Hmm.
depressing. Kind of get myself. Maybe I'll just go play Takeover or Ether, because like that's the sad part. Like those beefs ended like with them on top. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a limp to the finish line. This
Hmm.
kind of feels like it definitely feels like Drake is limping to the finish line. And
Hmm.
we're going to talk about whether Kendrick is or not next time you guys see us.
Until then, have fun, my jabronis.